And we're live.
Hey,
Hello.
hey.
So, welcome back, everybody. Another live chat with. This time we have Tom. Tom is an animator at Sony's PlayStation, as his hat say so right now,
That's
because
right. That's right.
representing.
Representing.
And yeah, he has has had a really interesting career. I perused your LinkedIn and I saw some of the stuff that you've done. I have questions. That's
All
for
right.
sure. Yeah. So, but yeah, thanks so much for taking the time, man. I know that you're really, really busy, so thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks for having me, man.
No problem, man. So, so Tom, like the very first thing that I saw of you was that Crash Bandicoot showreel when
Yeah.
Crash Bandicoot came out, right?
Right.
And I was playing the game and I loved it. And then I've been keeping an eye out at your Twitter feed, and you've been dropping a lot of knowledge like in that Twitter feed. Like it's incredible the stuff, some of the stuff they put up, and
Oh, thanks.
really really cool. I've retweeted some of it. So what actually compels you to first animate and then share that knowledge with the world?
Sure. Yeah. Well, obviously, it takes a lot of people to learn animation. And so
Yeah,
many people have helped me. And I'm still fairly new at this. It
mm,
was 6 years ago I decided I wanted to start learning it. And then 5 years ago, I actually started an animation mentor representing here.
that's
See?
it.
But over the years, I'll probably get into it a little bit more about my journey, but so many people have
Yeah,
helped me out. And I remember going back now, later on thinking about back then, things I wish I knew
mm,
then that I know now. And I've had friends ask me questions. Hey, how do you do this? Or how did you do that? So then I would, some of the tutorials I have online, they always came out of someone asking me a question,
for
like, hey, how do
sure.
I do this? I'm like, well, let me make a video
Yeah.
and show you what I know. I mean, I'm not an expert, but let me show you what I know.
But they're great videos, though. They're really,
Awesome.
really cool.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
I
no, it's really,
appreciate it.
really cool. Yeah. So, so before we go any further, like you can see, like on the right side, like there's some comments coming through. You can see people coming
Oh,
through.
let me
So,
check.
shout out to everybody in the comments watching the
Oh,
video,
nice.
watching us right now. We have about 19 people tuning in,
Sweet.
and yeah, guys, like drop comments as much as you want, like ask questions as well, and yeah, just like let's have fun. We have about an hour to do this, so let's do it.
Awesome.
So yeah, so Tom, like maybe you can actually break down a little bit of your journey, like from the very beginning,
Yeah.
since before you animated, how you got here. Because yeah, based on what I've seen, it hasn't been as straightforward as everyone else, right?
Right, exactly. Well, I grew up like into music all the time. And so that
Mm,
was like mainly my main career, but I also loved art and animation when I was a kid, especially I grew up in the 80s,
mm,
and Little Mermaid and Who Framed Roger Rabbit were the two big impacts on me back then.
amazing.
And I remember I got them on VHS, and I would pause the tape and try to draw. I'd find my favorite frames and then try to draw it.
Yeah,
And so kind of teaching myself. But back then, you didn't have the technology to be able to animate just at home,
mm,
and we couldn't afford like the high tech cameras that could record frame by frame. And, we tried some things, but it just never seemed to work out. And I remember in high school, I had to choose between music and art. And I eventually just chose music and kind of gave art
give
and
up
animation
art.
up.
Yeah,
Yeah. So for 20 years, I've done careers in music and some video editing. That was also a passion of mine.
right.
But I did that for a while, and then it was 6 years ago. I was reading a book. My friend Kenny Parker, shout out to Kenny. He told me about this book called Creativity Inc. Have you read that?
Oh yes, I read it and it's
Ed
amazing.
Catmull, you right? Yeah.
Ed
And
Catmull, yeah, so
right.
good.
Well, because the job I was in then was I was a worship pastor at a church, and we learned we were always encouraged to read leadership books, and that was
Yeah,
one of the ones that they all talked about. I'm like, oh, I got to read this, and it reminded me of my passion for animation, and
yeah,
and then seeing the creative culture at Pixar, I'm like, oh man, I need to be a part of something like this, And then I
yeah.
remembered because then I was reading the next book I was reading was Seven Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah, I read that as well.
It's good. It's
Yeah.
good. And I mean, yeah, that definitely helped me because it helps you like really look within yourself and
Mm,
see, are you doing what you want to be doing, And one of the questions was, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up? And so I'm like, and it was a little workbook. I'm filling it out. I'm like, I wanted to be an animator. And then it said, are you doing that now? No. And then the next question was, why not? I'm like, oh,
amazing.
Yeah, why not? And then I looked and I'm like, man, you can do this at home now on the computers. And, you know, and I actually was friends with Nathan Engelhardt at Disney. I was only friends with him. And it's funny, we had the same last name, but we're not related.
Oh, I see.
But that's why we became friends on Facebook, was because we had the same last name. It was just kind of random.
Coincidence, yeah.
Right. But then all of a sudden I thought about animation. I'm like, hey, Nathan works at Disney. Maybe I should ask him some questions. You know, and that's when I first started to realize the animation industry, for the most part, like everybody just wants to help everybody out, you know, from what I've experienced.
Yeah.
You know, I came from the music industry where not everybody wants to help you out, you know, and it's kind of cutthroat and everybody's a critic and it's hard, you know?
Yeah.
And then I came here and I'm like, it seemed like everybody I asked, they're like, yeah, I'll help you out, you know? And Nathan was like, hey, come visit the studio. I'm like, what? So I got to go visit Disney. And of course that built a passion in me too, you know, visiting Disney, seeing this. And I'm like, and on my way there, it's like 4.5 hour drive from Las Vegas. And I'm like, well, let me look up a podcast. Are there any animation podcasts? And remember, I knew nothing. I didn't know who Glenn Keane was. I didn't know the principles of animation at this point. And so I'm like, let me look it up. And Bancroft Brothers podcast came up.
Oh yeah, that's a good podcast as well.
Yeah. And so I listened to it the whole way there to California.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, hearing their passion and then other people, you know, all their guests' passion and stuff just got me fired up. And then listen to it all the way back another 4.5 hours. And I'm like, man, I need to do this. You know,
is definitely for me.
Right. But the funny thing was I thought it was going to be hand drawn. Like I didn't know, you know, like that hand drawn was kind of out and 3D is in, you know, like at that point I'm like, oh, I'm going to learn hand drawn animation. I'm trying to teach myself. And so I put together a little reel of some walks and jumps in hand drawn.
Yeah.
And then one of the Bancroft Brothers podcasts said, talked about looking for a mentor or having a mentor. And so I wrote to them on Facebook to Tom and Tony Bancroft. I just wrote, hey, you know, heard that podcast. How do you suggest I find a mentor? And, you know, I'm trying to switch over from being, at the time, from being a worship pastor, working in animation. And it was funny because Tony, they're different answers. Tony, and he said this, and I took it the wrong way. He said, don't quit your day job. And I'm like, you know, usually when people say that, that means you suck, right?
You suck, yeah.
And so at first I'm like, what? And then I realized what he was saying after that was that, his great advice was, if you're trying to transition into this work and you're doing something else, keep doing that something else while you're learning. Don't just quit everything and then, you know, dive into animation. And then you're going to get some job that in animation that you're probably stuck with, and, you know, or doing something you don't want. Then you're burnt out on animation. You have your free time. You have your free time and you're not going to want to animate or whatever, you know? And it was great advice. And then Tom Bancroft said, he goes, well, if you're ever in Nashville, let's have lunch. I'm like, what? And so I talked to my wife. I'm like, can I go to Nashville? 2 weeks later, I'm like, hey, Tom, I'm in Nashville.
That's amazing.
And we had lunch. Like, they are such nice guys, you know? And I had lunch with Tom, and he looked at my stuff, and he was the one that told me that I should go into 3D, because he's like, you know, 2D, there's such a long learning curve in drawing. You got to be a great draftsman. True. And it's like, you know, if you want to get any work in that. And he also informed me that there's not a lot of work right now in hand.
Unfortunately.
Right. Although now today it's getting more and more, which is pretty cool. But back then, this was like I said, 6 years ago. He was like, but I could see, you know, because of music, you've got some good timing, and I could see you're working out the spacing. And he's like, have you thought about learning 3D?
Yeah. And
I was like, oh yeah, that might be good. So coming from him here and that, I'm like, all right, maybe I need to do that. And
empowering, right?
Yeah, exactly. And he wasn't like, oh, you suck. He was just, I think you would be better at this, you know?
That's it.
And that was awesome. And
that's really cool.
That's when I looked up Animation Mentor, you know, looked online, what are some online schools, and and they popped up. And so I started with some of their workshops, just because I'm like, I'm not sure exactly what I think at the time too. I'm like, well, do I want to do storyboarding or do I want to animate, or what do I want to do? Right. And so I tried different workshops. I did their beginner workshop. I did their cartoony workshop, which is awesome. And that was with Bancroft et al. And Nick Kondo's teaching it now, I think. And he's awesome. We went to class together at Animation Mentor. And but cool. Mark taught me the master studies thing, where you can, look at animation that a master did, someone that you respect and admire, and then, try to copy it. And learn from it, and
exactly. I've seen your video that you actually kind of showcase how to take reference from and how to learn from like current animation that exists and all that stuff. And that stuff is really cool.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, and that's a lot of that I learned from Mark. And he worked at Pixar back in the original Toy Story and everything. And so I was like, man, I realized too, I'm learning from these top guys, Tom Bancroft from Disney, Bancroft et al. From Pixar. I'm like, this wouldn't happen in music. I can't, I did a post on that too about, you can't learn from Bono, but in animation, you can learn from the top guys, and people that have lots of experience. It's amazing.
And you know what? I find it really interesting because I actually I have connections to music as well. Not like I was not making music, but I had like a hip hop blog that I ran for like 9 years, the Woody Spawned. And I learned a lot about the music industry, and we actually had to go to events and meet artists and get to know how to record. We actually even put together some albums.
Nice.
And I think the grind of a music artist or like a music label, or because temporarily we actually were a music label because we had to put some albums together. The hard grind that you have to do to find the opportunities, you need to fetch the opportunities. You cannot just wait for the opportunities because there's so many artists out there. That you need to actually expose yourself. I feel like you actually got that from music. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong. And then you apply that to animation. So as soon as you got an opportunity, you're like, "Yep, I'm there." Right?
Here we go.
No second guess. Yeah,
that's exactly it. Yeah. And I realized that too in animation. You really need to want it, because it is so hard. Like at first, you're naive. Like I was naive, thinking, "Oh, I'll just take a quick couple classes and then I'll get a job at Disney." Or whatever,
That's what we all think.
Right, exactly. And then you start to realize, even after you finish Animation Mentor, I wasn't even close to where I needed to be to get a professional job, but in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, I'll just finish this out and I'll just go get a job. It's awesome,
Yeah, you get so many reality checks in this industry, and you keep on getting them. Like no matter how long you animate, it's crazy. It's funny because one of the very first shots that I did that I was super proud of. My mentor at that time was Jason Ryan. I worked on it to the point that I'm like, I'm going to polish the shot. It's going to be really cool. It's going to be like film, like quality. And for sure, people will see this shot and be like, let's put it in the movie because it's going to be that good, right?
Yeah.
I sent it to Jason and be like, Jason, what do you think about this? Pretty cool, huh? He looked at it and be like, great blocking, Harvey. Keep going.
Oh man.
And that's one of those kind of situations that you only realize slowly how much of a mountain you have to climb in order to be an animator. And then the more you learn, the more you realize that mountain is infinite, right?
Right, exactly.
So you can go on forever. This is why the 9 old men animated until their old age.
Yep.
Because you can continuously learn animation. And once you accept that, then things become easier. Right. But I think every animator in the beginning thinks that there is a finite level of knowledge that you need to have, and then you just stay there.
Right.
And then you go and work.
Right, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Well, that's what I love when you hear Glenn Keane talk about it. He's not even happy where he's at, and his skills. And, I shared in one of my posts that he said that growth in animation is like stairs. It's not like a gradual incline, because you're grinding hard and then you hit a wall and it's like, man, I can't figure this out. And then it might be someone's feedback. Who knows what's going to spark it, but then all of a sudden something gives you a breakthrough and you take a step up.
That's it.
And then you go again, and you probably don't even notice it. That's why I started sharing all my stuff on Instagram, because it's a great way to go back and look.
That's it.
At the end of a year, go back and see, where was I a year ago? Holy cow. I grew a lot, but I didn't you're never satisfied.
You're never satisfied. Yeah, exactly. Like even with that shot that you actually did just last week, you probably look at it the week after and be like, nah, this was not as good as I thought.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah,
I do
that's
that
kind of how it
different.
was.
That's why we have deadlines, so that things actually get done, right?
Yeah, otherwise you'll be like polishing that forever.
Right. Exactly.
And I have a question. Like, so you're the first animator that I know that actually was a pastor before,
Right.
and now transitioned to animation. So what kind of like lessons have you learned from being a pastor? Because I'm guessing being a pastor on a church, you have to actually kind of like have some kind of like, most animators, let me just rewind a little bit. Most animators are introverted, right? You sit on your desk and you just don't like speak with people very much. You just like focus on your animation. It's very cerebral, right? So you spend all your time just like thinking about animation. Maybe you talk with the guy on your right or on your left, but that's about it.
Right.
But like most of us are like introverted. So I'm guessing you had to switch from being a pastor, talking to people every day and like being like outspoken and all that, to then doing a job on a desk. But I'm guessing there must be some correlation there, and there must be some lessons that you've learned that you can translate from being a pastor to being an animator, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and what was great was I was a pastor of musicians, and so
I see.
I got to learn a lot about how to lead artists, so, and because artists think differently, and we can be very emotional. So the way that you lead an artist is a lot different than you would lead someone else, and so starting to learn that type of thing of how to care for people, how to encourage them, and in a church with the musicians are all volunteers. And so that's the other thing, is learning how to lead people to do work, but they're not getting paid for it. It's not like you could say, do this because I'm your boss. You know what I mean?
Valuable lesson.
Yeah. So it's like, no, how do you encourage people to want to do this, and then equip them to do it themselves? That was always my thing. Was I didn't want to just be the lead guy. Hey, I'm the guy out there with the guitar and singing, but I wanted to build a team to where they could do it without me, and then I think I learned a lot from that. And then coming into animation and realizing the team, even though I'm working from home, like I've only worked remotely in animation so far.
Because it's been 6 years and you've been just freelancing, and I'm guessing
freelancing, and then now with COVID. And everything. Yeah.
All right. Wow.
Yeah. And also I'm in Las Vegas, and I really can't move anywhere right now because my two oldest kids are from my wife's previous marriage, and their dad lives here in Las Vegas. So it's not like we're going to up and move to wherever a job is, and so I'm grateful for remote opportunities, because it seems like mostly in animation, you got to move to where the job is. And
yeah, tell me about it, man. It's been like 15, 18 years, I think, that I've been doing this. And yeah, like this is what you do all the time, man. Just move around.
Right.
In a way, dare I say that COVID in a way was actually a blessing because of this situation, that you can work from home, because you can tell there's a shift happening. People are embracing and be like, okay, I'll apply for the job, but only if I can work remotely. Depending on the person, because obviously if you're young and you actually want to discover the world, then there's nothing better than going to New Zealand and then working Weta Digital or whatever, But yeah, like for people like us with family and all that stuff, responsibilities, then it becomes a bit more difficult for you to move around.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to work at PlayStation right now if it wasn't for the pandemic, because now they're open. Like a lot of studios were forced to be able to figure out how to work remotely.
That's it.
And so now a lot of them are opening up to more people around the country, around the world, which is amazing.
Exactly.
So it's like we have a lot more opportunities now.
Yeah, exactly. So, and Tom, like one of the things that I've noticed is that you have like this infectious, personality, and you're always positive as well.
I try to be.
Yeah, what does that stem from? Because that in animation together normally ends up with great results, because people normally gravitate towards you and they want to learn from you, especially the more experience you have. Yeah. So where does that come from?
I definitely think it's from the church background, and when I was singing, people would make fun of me sometimes, because I always smile when I'm singing,
Oh, right.
I remember my first encounter with online trolls was when I would put videos of me singing on YouTube, you know, and they're like, why is he so happy? You know, and like people would just make fun of me, and he smiles all the time. And, you know, and it's just like, I mean, you got to find that thing that makes you super happy, that brings you, I mean, there's so much junk going on in the world, you know. It's like we need those escapes, you know. And I remember watching a Chris Farley documentary. You know, it was sad what happened to him, but it's like he mentioned something about just wanting to bring light and joy to other people. You know, it's like that's why he did what he did. And I'm like, that is a great goal to have. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like there's lots of different things you can do for a job, but what if you can do a job where you're also helping bring joy to other people? You know?
For sure. Yeah, I keep saying this. I keep saying this to people here because of the YouTube channel. But like the happiness that the YouTube channel brings is because like I feel like I'm making some kind of difference in people, in the journey of people through animation, and that's nothing better because it feels like it's bigger than animation, right?
Right. Exactly.
Like you know exactly what I mean, but it feels like it's bigger than animation when you can actually teach someone something that changes their career for the better. All of a sudden, it's not just a good animation that you've done and it's in a movie or a game and then it's lost forever, but it's actually someone's life that has been changed forever. And they will remember you, just like you were saying about your mentors before, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you're forever thankful for them to take the time to teach you stuff, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and it's like an exponential effect. Like you do your own work, you know, for your own credit. That's it, right? That's it. But you do your own work, but then you also help others do their work. It's exponential. You know what I mean? It's like your influence just grows and grows, and not that you're doing it for yourself, but you're helping be bigger than yourself, right?
Exactly. So that's great. And you in games now, right? Working for PlayStation, Crash Bandicoot, really cool game. I love that. Thanks, I play with my daughter. I think the animations are epic. So like, cool? Kudos to the whole animation team. That was really, really well put together.
Thanks, man.
How are you enjoying games? Is that what you wanted all along, or you just fell into it?
Yeah, I kind of fell into it. Like I always wanted to do feature, which I think a lot of people do at first. You know, it's like because that's the main thing you watch movies, and it's like, oh, I want to work at Disney or Pixar. And then you know how it came about with Crash was. I guess I got to go back to my story a little bit, was after Animation Mentor, I met a guy there who actually lives in Las Vegas too. And he has a studio here where he does TV commercials.
Right.
So he gave me my first freelance job of like animating, you know, some things for TV commercials and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then I started learning, sorry, I got to look at my notes. I don't want to leave anybody out. I started learning from Nathan Engelhardt again from Disney.
Oh, from Disney. Yeah.
He started me back on the bouncing ball because he said, after you're done with Animation Mentor, he's like, you're still not there. Like he was the one that kind of gave me that wake up call. You're still not there. So he brought me back to the bouncing ball. And actually that exercise that I do where it's like you animate a bouncing ball on twos and try to feel it out. I learned that from him, you know, and it's like, it totally helps you see your timing and spacing. Right. Exactly. And then I was sharing my stuff on Instagram, and there's another guy who lives in Las Vegas. This is so weird. Like I go online, and then these guys live in Vegas, right? Yeah. Jeff Capilli, he does awesome, amazing work. He did this awesome shot where it's the rig Dana, you know, and she's like getting sad.
Oh yes, I've seen that. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, he's amazing. Yeah. Well, he reached out to me to help. There was a company he knew of that was doing Lego Star Wars commercials.
Right.
And so he's like, hey, you know, they might be looking for someone. Can I give them your name? I'm like, yes. And then I got to animate, you know, Luke, Anakin, Darth Vader, Leia. And it was so cool. And then from that, I'm like, man, so I just kept this freelance stuff going. I remember I went to CTN right after that. Yeah. And all of my Animation Mentor friends around me were like oogling over this teacher, Sean Sexton, and he's from DreamWorks, right? And they're like, oh, and like he walks in and he's like a rock star, and everybody's around him. I'm like, I never took a class with him. I felt left out, and so I'm like, I need to go back
And
so
do a
I
class with
actually
this guy.
I went back and did class 6 again a year later, so that I could learn from Sean. And I think it's thanks to Sean that I got another big boost in, the level of quality of animation that I could do. He pushed me. I don't know if you've seen the shot that I did. It was a while ago of this guy in a mental institution, and he's kind of breaking out. He's like, I don't know why, but today is going to be a great day. It's kind of crazy.
Oh, I don't think so. Actually,
that's all right. I don't share it anymore because it's like, not the quality I could do now.
Yeah.
But it was fun, and Sean pushed me through that. And one of the things he said, which helped me a lot, was after this, you need to keep doing personal shots. Like he said, and if you turn in a demo reel to me at DreamWorks, today, and I see what's on your reel, and then 3 to 6 months later, you send me that exact same reel.
Yep.
He's like, I'm not interested.
100%.
And I'm like, oh, so I got to keep working, and that was such great advice. That
is true, though. That is true. Even when
go ahead.
Yeah. Even when you're starting the industry, it's still the same thing. It's still exactly the same thing. Like, because you still have to actually submit your show reel if you're to change from Sony to another studio, right?
Yeah.
So
a lot of times you can't share your professional work on your reel, at least not right away. And so it's like you have to do personal work in order to share where you're at.
And it shows commitment as well, right? Because it shows that you're actually kind of like always growing. And it's something that all of us that have been through the motions know exactly how that is, right?
Right.
So if you just keep on recycling the same work and sending it over, it feels lazy. It feels like the person is not really putting as much effort as they should be in order to learn animation, right? So that's excellent advice.
Because it's like, what are you doing? Especially if you're not even currently working. Like if they see, okay, well, you're not currently working, but your reel looks the same as it did last year. So what are you doing?
Exactly. Yeah.
So they need to see. Yeah. And so then I remember, I'm like, well, then how do I come up with a new shot? And so the Anim challenge, I don't know if you've ever done that.
Oh yeah, I've seen it. I haven't done it, but I've seen it.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's
Good
really
people.
cool.
Yeah.
And so I did a couple of those. I did this Halloween shot. They had the Thep rig, and he was like a mummy, but he was very cartoony. And I was studying Chuck Jones at the time, and I was doing some master studies of him. And I'm like, oh, I want to do this kind of like Looney Tunes, And he goes, it's Halloween. He walks up to the door and he wants candy, and he's all excited. And then he reads a sign that says "Press button for candy." He reaches up, pushes the button. The floor drops out from under him. He's floating in air, looks at the camera, with this deadpan face, and then falls. It's simple, but it was fun,
That's great.
And a lot of people loved it. I'm like, oh, that's kind of crazy. This was just a little exercise,
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I'm going to do another Anim challenge. And so I did another one with the Twigs rig, and it was like audio from Andy Griffith's show. And anyways, that helped me a lot with figuring out some quick timing. Like with every shot I do, I try to think of what do I want to learn. And for that one, it was more of like, I want to get some quick timing and some expression changes. Like, how do I get, because he's like all excited telling these kids about this is where you get incarcerated. He's pointing to a jail.
Yeah.
But instead of saying incarcerated, he says inarculated. He says it wrong.
I've seen that.
But he's all excited. And then someone's like, inarculated.
Yeah.
And then he changes to like, oh, what did I say?
Yeah.
And just something simple like that, going from excited to like, oh, what did I say? It was very helpful to learn to make that quick change.
Change of emotion, of course. Yeah. It makes complete sense.
Yeah.
And I'm getting the vibe. Sorry, before we go in, like, to everybody in the comments, thanks very much for keeping the comments coming. Lots of stuff coming through. We have people from Argentina.
Nice.
We have people from India watching. We also have people from Sweden. So Eddie Anderson is here. And
hey, Eddie.
Yeah. And Aaron Baker is here as well.
Aaron.
You know Aaron, right?
Oh yeah, he's awesome.
He's been here before. He's
awesome. I watched that one.
Yeah. Shout out to Aaron.
Yeah.
But keep the comments coming because it's really, really cool.
That's awesome.
Germany, that's cool. Virginia, just keep on like mentioning where you're watching from. That's actually really cool to see. So what I was going to say,
I was trying to get into how I got into Crash, but yeah, go ahead. It's a long story. It's crazy. But.
Actually, you haven't finished that arc, so let's continue.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, it was like I was trying to do as many shots as I could within that year.
Yeah.
After I finished going back to Animation Mentor, and so I did those 2 Anim Challenge shots, and then I started taking class with Michael Makarovich, who from Pixar,
Right.
Who he's at AnimC, the Animation Collaborative.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, they weren't doing online classes. Only you had to go to San Francisco and take classes live.
In person.
But this was like he put out there, hey, I'm going to try this. I'm going to do an online class. Is anybody interested? And I bit right away. I'm like, because he's awesome.
Yeah.
And he helped me with another shot where it's like a guy and a girl who are in love but having a fight, you know. And so from him, I wanted to learn more about subtle acting. Mm-hmm. And he works very much in like a layered style and in the graph editor. So what influences what. So like, you know, sometimes he might copy something from the chest and put it in the neck or whatever, you know, like trying to see how you can get everything to be connected. Yeah. So I learned a lot from him in that shot. Now all of a sudden, like this was within, I don't know, maybe 5 months. I've got like 3 new shots on my reel.
Yeah, that's pretty cool though.
Right?
5 months for 3 new shots is pretty good.
It was crazy. Yeah. And then I saw Nick Kondo at CTN, and he was like, "Hey, I think you should do another shot." He kind of helped me come up with my shot of the talking dog. It's a audio from Ferris Bueller and stuff like that. So he helped me come up with that. Yeah. And then I had Aaron McGriff from Pixar. He wasn't there yet, but at the time he gave me feedback on the shot. So this whole time I'm trying to build my reel, but I'm also learning and making these relationships with people in the industry.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Right. And I'm sharing it online, like on Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn. Yeah. And so that's what led to, because it was within a year, I had 5 new shots on my reel. And that's what led to Crash Bandicoot was Eric Drobel. He was the animation supervisor, and he was in charge of choosing the animators for Brazen Animation. And I applied there maybe a year before and never heard anything.
They do great work, though.
Yeah, they do amazing work. Yeah, I was like, that's definitely a place I want to work. Yeah. And so I think I applied there like a year ago. So they had my stuff on file. Mm-hmm. And then I think Eric must have seen me on LinkedIn too, because I saw him on LinkedIn and I reached out to him and said, I really want to be, because all he could say was that it was a cartoony game. Right. And I'm like, I'm sold. I want to do this.
NDAs, right? You didn't know it was Crash at the time. You just
didn't know
whatever it is. Whatever it is.
Cartoony game. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And I saw in his background, he had Looney Tunes background too. Yeah. You know, I'm like, yes, I want to learn from you, please. Nice. And luckily he took a chance on me. And I never asked him why, what he saw in me or whatever. Yeah. But and we still have a great relationship now. But I can't tell you how much I learned from him and from Bruno Montero on Crash. Like, it was intense because it was only like 3 months. Yeah. And I did 12 shots in 3 months for the cinematics. Yeah. But it was intense, but it was awesome. It was like a huge masterclass, and like they give notes. Luckily they let me turn in quite often so I could get notes more often rather than like, if you work by your own for like a week or half a week or whatever, and you're like, I don't know if I'm in the right direction.
Yeah. And you need that support in the beginning as well, right? Because you're working professionally in a new project and stuff. Like after a while, when you were like, it's been a year, like in games, right? When it's been a year or two, then you're like, how this goes. So you can spend a week or two without actually having any feedback, and you're fairly certain that you're hitting the spot. Right. But yeah, in the beginning, you definitely need to actually know where to go, right?
Yeah, and like, it's a different style too. Like it is a specific style for Crash Bandicoot. And so it's like I didn't want to go the wrong direction or go off model or whatever. And so it was really awesome that they would just continually give me feedback and do drawovers, and it was amazing to me what Eric could see just from, he doesn't see my Maya shot, my Maya file, he just sees what I'm sharing with him, and he's like, oh, I can tell, this control is off, this axis or whatever, change this on the graph editor. I'm like, how do you see that?
It's like looking at the Matrix, right?
Exactly.
Just the letters falling through. Like, what?
Right. Like, dude, I'm not worthy. but yeah, and then that was awesome.
That's really
Getting to
cool.
do Crash Bandicoot. Yeah.
Yeah. So you spent how long on Crash, if I may
It was
ask?
3 months.
3 months.
Yeah.
And only cinematics?
Only cinematics. Yeah.
Only cinematics.
Yeah.
Were you curious about gameplay, or do you actually think that cinematics is your jam?
Cinematics is what I've been into, but more recently, I've gotten into gameplay just mainly because when I was applying for jobs, there were 2 different places that were looking at me for gameplay stuff, but both of them said, so Superseed Studios and Blizzard. I had an interview with Blizzard for World of Warcraft gameplay.
Oh, yeah.
And they said, we think you could probably apply for cinematics, but you need more experience in gameplay. And Superseed was like, we'd love for you to learn more about Unreal. We're getting some Unreal experience.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. And I went back to Animation Mentor to do the game animation workshop. That was recently, very recently. And as I did that, I'm like, man, this is fun, and I like that it's a little bit more quick turnaround, and it's pretty awesome being able to play things that you animated, and then the troubleshooting of like trying to get it to work together, and
that's it.
And stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, like if you actually are going that route, eventually, when you actually start working professionally as a gameplay animator, which I have no doubt you will, since you are now working a game at like Crash and all that stuff. Like it takes a while for you to kind of like get your head around some of the stuff in order to implement it, because it's almost like, in the beginning when you're learning animation, you just think about the 12 principles all the time, and you think about the way, and you like actively thinking about it, but then after a while you stop thinking about it and it's just animation and you're doing it.
Nice.
Working as a gameplay animator is pretty much the same. Like in the beginning, you're thinking about Unreal and implementation, and how do I reload, and how do I actually get things in game, and how do I connect this with this, and what is root motion, and how does it connect? It's weird. But then after you know all those rules, like about a year or two, then you're thinking about how can you push the animation to make it look like whatever, right? And that's when the fun begins, because then all of a sudden you know the rules, and you know how to get from point A to point Z, and then you're just connecting the dots in between, and you have to talk with this department and that department, and this guy can sort you out the code to do whatever. So it becomes really fun. It becomes really fun, because then you're spinning plates, right? And it's all about like, I know my animation can be better. Who do I have to talk to for my animation to be better? But once people play it and if it feels good, it's because you made it really cool, right? And
that's amazing.
It's really cool. It feels great.
That's great. Yeah, and you've been doing that for a while now, right?
Yeah, all the animation career, and just like you, I actually, because like I'm 40 something, so I think most of the people that are like a certain age, we kind of started with the idea of going into film, right?
Right.
And I fell into games mainly because my mentor said, just start. Whatever you decide, just start somewhere. Experience is experience, which was an amazing piece of knowledge. And I started in games, and I knew that I loved to play games. I just didn't know I liked to make them.
Right.
So when I started animating in games, I was doing QA before, but when I started animating in games, it was like super cool. I was like, man, this is next level. And funny thing is, I could see that we're just in the beginning of a journey, almost like, I said this into one of my interviews before, almost like Walt Disney and the Nine Old Men right at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
When there was no rules, and they were just like, spacing? What's spacing?
Again,
I don't know.
New frontier.
Let's put a name to it. This is spacing. And then that's it, right? I feel like games is going through the same kind of vibe right now, right? Everyone is just trying to figure things out as we go. There's no rules. Every studio does it slightly different. But we're all trying to push the envelope.
Right.
It's really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. Anyways, Tom, sorry. I just went.
Oh, no, you're good, man.
Tangent.
You're good.
We're completely off tangent, man.
That's awesome.
So you only been animating for 6 years, you said, right?
Yeah, well, 6 years ago, I started thinking about it. 5 years ago, I started animation. I started going to Animation Mentor. And then it's probably been a little over 3 years that I've been professionally getting paid to do animation. So, yeah, it's still new.
Yeah, exactly. And what do you say to anyone that is out there? Because you've changed careers, right?
Right.
Specifically for going from something else they used to do for years to come
Yeah.
into something completely new that you've been doing just for 5 years. What do you say to anybody out there that thinks it's too late for me to start animating, or thinks that like I cannot change my job because it's risky and I'm not too sure if it's going to work out?
Right. I'd say if you want it, you can get it. It's got to be something you got to be dedicated to, and it's never too late. I mean, I'm an example of that. I've never felt like I was looked down upon because of my age. And really, when they're looking at your reel, they don't see your age.
Not really. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was one of the first pieces of advice I got from Nathan Engelhardt at Disney was he was like, we don't really look at the resume right away. He's like, the first thing we see is your reel. And so wow us with your reel. And then we might look at your resume after that just to see what your experience was and stuff like that. But, they're going through reels. And so he's like, man, make your reel look awesome. And it doesn't matter how old you are or how little experience you've had.
100%.
And I've experienced that for sure. The fact that they let me work on Crash Bandicoot 4 and I barely had any experience.
Yeah, it's a great start.
I mean, how does that happen? But
right.
It's dedication and hard work, and you got to just keep working hard and hopefully and making connections with people. I think the social media is amazing these days, where you can really connect with people that you would not be able to connect with before. And
sure,
you don't have to wait for the next conference to meet someone. You can meet them online and follow them and ask them questions and.
Yeah,
it's pretty awesome.
It's really cool. And you must have noticed this already, but the industry is super small. It looks huge when you're outside,
right.
But once you start working, doesn't matter if it's games or film or VFX or whatever, everyone knows each other, right?
Yeah.
So I think, as you said, to your point, social media helps you to have like an in even before you actually get into the industry, right?
Right.
Because if people are looking at your feed and they follow you and they start to see cool animations coming through, and you're that guy that is positive and has like cool attitude and people like your work,
right?
I'm pretty sure people will come knocking your door at some point.
Right? Exactly.
It's
for sure.
Really
and if
cool.
anything, they might remember your name, and then when they're going through, it's like, hey, I've seen a shot that he did before, or what I mean.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely. Yeah. It's really cool.
Awesome.
Boba here has a really interesting question for you.
All right. Let's see what we got.
Says, can you tell us a little bit more about how creative was the process of creating animations for Crash Bandicoot? I think besides great ideas, I believe you have to stay within deadlines, I guess. How do you balance it all?
Yeah. Well, what was great on Crash was so they gave us the storyboards. And a lot of times in the first pass, they would let us, it's like shoot your own reference and come up with the blocking, and there was layout already in there and stuff like that. But then you would I felt like I had the freedom to shoot some reference and try something, and then especially because I was able to turn it in so quickly and get feedback quickly, there was more freedom for that, because it's like, if I'm off track, I'm not going to be off track for long. It's like they can steer me back, so I felt like on a lot of the shots, I had a lot of freedom, towards the beginning of just like, hey, what's your idea? Go for it. And then now let's steer it where it needs to go, And like, there's one shot in particular where Crash is about to fall off the edge of the cliff, and then he falls back, and then there were some extra frames there, and that the sigh that I put in, so he goes, whew, that wasn't originally in there. It was just, he was supposed to do that, come back, and then they look at each other. But I was like, there's too many frames here, and I'm like, it feels like something needs to happen. And then they were like, he's not completely scared yet, because right after that, there's going to be this big hand that comes after him, and that's where he's scared. So he's not going to be like, oh my gosh, I almost fell off a cliff, and so it was kind of cool to be able to just go and then put in this, whew, and then they added the audio of the shoo in there and stuff like that. It was just neat, but and then they directed me through that. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool. Let's do it this way, and then
let's refine it, right?
Yeah, it was a great process, and I felt like it was very cooperative. It wasn't just, hey, do this.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
really cool.
awesome. That's really, really cool. Thanks for the question. Please continue to actually ask questions, guys. We have a little bit more time, so let's do it. The
Nice.
turnaround of people have been pretty impressive. Tom, I think you're very
Yes.
popular.
Oh, it's social media, right? Like you put it
Social
out
media.
there. Hopefully
That's
people will show up. I love
Exactly.
it. But yeah, I wanted to mention there was also a company that I started, Engelhardt Creative.
Oh, nice.
And it was through that. That was right after Crash Bandicoot. The Christian Broadcasting Network reached out to me, and it was only because this guy Tim Lannon saw my work on on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And he reached out to me on LinkedIn and was like, "Hey, have you done any Toon Boom work?" It's a Toon Boom show that they were a kids show that they're trying to start up.
Oh, nice.
And I did when I was doing those TV commercials for Jerry Thompson here in town at Lightforge Studios.
Mhm.
We did one commercial using Toon Boom. And so I'm like, I have this little experience here. Let me show you, And they were like, okay, well, we want to try to. This was crazy. I don't know how this came about, but they're like, we want to try to have you animate this one episode mostly by yourself. It's like 22-minute episode. How long do you think it'll take? And
Yeah.
I was kind of dumb and like I didn't know, and so I said I could do that in 7 weeks. I killed myself.
Yeah, exactly.
But I got it done. Probably not the quality that they wanted because I know they had to go in and fix a lot of it. But it was a great experience and to see what my limits are too.
Of course.
It's like,
yeah.
I totally killed myself for 7 weeks, and I'm like, okay, I don't want to do that again.
At least you delivered, though.
Yeah,
right?
I hit the deadline, and
That's
and it was good enough for them to ask me to do a second episode.
Cool.
So I asked, can we hire someone else on the team? So it's not just me. And they said, well, we would rather if you hire someone else. So it wasn't even me trying to start a company. They're just like, I think it was because it would be easier for paperwork or something. I don't know how it came up, but they're like, what if you hire someone else and we'll pay you? I'm like, oh, okay. And
sounds like a company.
Yeah. And so I went back to my friend who started it all, who told me to read Creativity Inc. back at the beginning, Kenny Parker. Yeah. And I said, hey, Kenny, you want to join me? And I taught him everything that I knew from the first episode, and we animated the second episode together. And the third episode, but it was still too like crunch time,
Yeah.
And so third episode, I'm like, we need one more person.
So basically, every single episode, you got another person. So episode 2, episode 3.
Exactly. Like we need one more person or longer period of time. It's like we can't do it all. And so they were like, okay, one more person. And so then that's when I hired Court Oberbeck. Mm-hmm. And I found her on Instagram, and I shared a post about this too. It's like it's because of how much she shared her work on Instagram. And she was always doing exercises. So it's like she wasn't always just working on a personal shot. She's like, let me just do this quick little exercise and show you what I'm working. She's sharing her process. Yeah. And so you could see her passion for it. And I'm like, yeah, she's awesome. Like I would love to work with her. And then she would also ask me for feedback. So I knew that she respected my feedback, And so I'm like, okay, this is a cool relationship. And so I'm like, let's try it out. And she's done amazing. So Court and Kenny and me, we worked on episode 3 together, and then we just finished episode 4 as well.
Nice one.
That's kind of how I started Engelhardt Creative. It was just for that. It's like I didn't even want to start a company. It just kind of happened.
That's amazing.
Pretty neat. Yeah.
Do you guys have a website?
It's engelhardtcreative.com.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it just shows Gizmo Go is the name of the show on CBN. It's a kids show, Toon Boom, that we were working on. It doesn't have much on the website right now.
No. Oh, okay. I was going to bring it up, but
you can, if you want. It's got a quick little demo of like shots from that first episode I did by myself around there and stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, it's not one of those companies where I'm like, I want to go out and get a lot more Toon Boom work right now or whatever. It just kind of happened, and we'll see. That's been this whole process. I've just been open to, hey God, whatever you want,
Yeah, of course.
Is this a hobby or is this a job, or I don't know. I'll just keep following the rabbit trail and see where it leads,
That's amazing. Like I feel like that's kind of like the best way to start a company, right?
Yeah.
Because someone came to you to actually kind of like ask you for something, and you're organically growing it. It's not like you actually just like hired 3 people and be like, let's try it out and put an
Right.
episode together, right?
Right.
And
Exactly.
people are still getting paid as well, so it's really cool.
Yeah. And I got to mention, shout out to Justin Garcia is the director of that show and creator of that show. And then they also hired an animator, tech animator, who
Yeah.
he's amazing and he knows Toon Boom like no one else, Seth Gordon.
Right.
And he's taught us a lot as well. So
you're streamlining the process at this point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but this is really cool.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Gizmo Go. Is that the name of the show?
Yeah, that's the name of the show. And there's just these cute characters, and they learn.
This looks great.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah, this looks amazing.
Yeah, they learn Bible stories in each episode. It's for Christian Broadcasting Network.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like, I mean, you could never tell that it's only like 3 people working on this.
Right? Well, and this episode was just me animating it. Well, there's lots of people that are doing the artwork and all the other parts of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just me doing the initial animation.
This is great though.
On this episode. And then the director is also a great animator. So I think he went in and cleaned up a lot of my work.
Right.
Which was good. Because like I was dying 7 weeks,
Yeah, so doing all this in 7 weeks is a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't look like you rushed it in any ways.
Cool.
So major kudos to you and the team now as well for putting it together. That's for sure.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Amazing. Cool. Tom, can I ask you, I know that obviously you have animation, but I'm guessing because you're a pastor as well, you still have church in your life, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Is that some of the passion that you have outside of animation? Like, do you still produce music related to what you used to do before?
What's cool is, it kind of switched. Before it was like music in the church was my job and animation was my hobby. And now it's like, animation is my job and my passion. Yeah. And then I get to do music now, where it's not a job. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like where it's actually
it's just out of passion, right?
Fulfilling my soul and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's still fresh from, I actually just stopped being a worship pastor 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So I was still.
Also, you're still doing it before.
I was still doing it. That was something I forgot to mention. Like there have been times where I had 3 jobs at one time, where I'm working the church job and then 2 different animation jobs at the same time. And I'm like, and I also learned from that, like, no, you got to know your limits.
Yeah.
And your family is important.
Yeah, it's
so
like I can relate to that so much.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah, because at some point you need to actually focus on what's important, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
and you learn. I mean, I think you got to go through the burnout to know. Otherwise it's just a theory.
For sure.
But if you go through it and you realize, okay, this is my limit. Now I know.
Yeah.
Yourself better.
Yeah, completely. And things start to kind of like suffer, like the quality of the animation maybe, or maybe families not having so much time with you, or
exactly
whatever it is. Things start to kind of like, that you just like doing too much at some point, right? So
right.
I can't.
So yeah, now I'm just doing PlayStation, and it's awesome. I love working for them.
That's great.
Great company. Yeah.
Yeah, Sony's a good company. That's for sure. I never worked for them, but I always heard great things about them. So I have no doubt. That's great. So you actually go back to the church and you still pastor musicians?
No. So now it's like
fun?
I can just go and enjoy church.
Enjoy church as usual, as a regular person that is not involved with the background. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, because I think that's important for pastors too. I think a lot of times you can do it for way too long, and you can almost forget what it's like to be someone that's just coming on Sunday. Because you're so worried about other people and caring for other people.
It's like preparing an event, right? You're just thinking about I hope people like it, right?
Yeah, it's a different mindset.
Yeah.
And then it's like, you know what? You need to be able to go and take it in as well,
Yeah. For
which is
sure.
nice for
For
sure.
sure. For sure. That's great, man. That's really cool. I think like Petter here has a question that might be interesting. In your animation journey, what's something about animation production that made you go, wow, I never would have guessed they did it that way? I guess in Crash might be a good example, maybe.
Sure. So like in production, just the process, I guess. Is that what we're asking?
Yeah, the process, I guess, like animation,
Never would have guessed they did
cutscenes.
it this way, this certain way. Well, I guess I would say this, because Crash was like my first game experience. I didn't realize the limitations of the rigs,
Mhm.
because it's got to work in the engine and everything, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And so it's like, it's probably, hopefully, it's hard for you guys to notice when you watch the cinematics of Crash and everything like that, that the rig was very limited. The rigs were very
yeah.
limited. We
That's
had to use a
dangerous.
lot of scaling and like cheating
Yeah.
to try to make it look stretchy and cartoony and stuff like that. And Eric was great at leading us through that and stuff like that. But I think that for sure was something that surprised me. I'm
Yeah.
expecting, hey, I'm working on Crash Bandicoot. I'm expecting these rigs that have all these extra controls and everything. It's
Super
like, no,
cartoony.
you can't do that. The game can't handle it. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I've been there before as well. Yeah, it's the engine. Like the
yeah,
engine does not understand cartoony. They understand
right,
realistic, but not cartoony. And it's a bit of a shame for us animator because you like animators because you have to find other ways, creative ways around the cartoony in order to make it that way, right?
right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And that was just a good experience because you're always going to run into it when a rig can't do what you want it to do.
Yeah,
So it's like
completely.
trying to learn how to problem solve and make it work the way you want it to work.
Yeah, completely, man, completely.
And that actually helps me, brings me to something I don't think I've shared a post on this or anything, but about just the importance of, for me, learning how to draw enough to be able to kind of plan out poses, especially like if you're doing cartoony work,
Hmm.
and for breakdowns, because I feel like when I'm just in 3D and I'm just dealing with the rig, it's hard to imagine because you're limited by what the rig can do. It's hard to imagine the movement that would look right, or getting the right flow from this pose to this pose,
Yeah,
in a cartoony way. But when you draw, there's no limit,
yeah.
and so you can sit there and draw it. Oh, it would be cool if it did this and test it out. And then it's like, now can I get the rig to do that?
That's it.
You know what
That's
I
a great
mean?
tip. That's a
So
great
you're
tip. Yeah.
not stuck to the limitations of the rig, and you can sit there and try to figure out, well, can it? And then well, this is probably about as far as I can push that before I break the rig or it looks terrible.
Yeah, yeah. No, I actually try to like all my students on my workshop. Like I actually when we do the course, the first week or the second week, I try to get them away from Maya,
Uh-huh.
which is actually alien to some like most students because you're so used to actually staying in Maya and do everything within Maya. But
Right.
it's exactly for the same reason that you just mentioned right now. I think there's something to be said about being creative and Maya stifling the creativity because of all the controls and everything is 3D and moving the camera
Exactly.
around and all that stuff. I think it stifles the creativity. I think to me at least, and it's true to most students, that whenever they actually come out of Maya and then they actually go and like it can even be stickman that they actually
Yeah.
have to do in terms of actually getting the pose from here to there to here to, and then he's going to do a backflip or whatever it is. At least it's just you and the paper and that's it, or you and the iPad and that's
Yep.
it. And that allows you to kind of like be fully creative instead of thinking about the rig is broken on the elbow, or maybe I cannot do this thing with the rig because the channel box doesn't allow me.
Right.
I think that stuff like just distracts from the creativity. So that's a great tip because I do exactly that as well whenever I'm animating, which I haven't done a lot of lately.
Oh man, you got to jump in there.
Yeah, but yeah, I do exactly that. Like I actually try, like Maya confuses me sometimes. I feel
Yeah.
like I need to come out of Maya and just think about the animation that I'm trying to do clearly by
Right.
just getting a piece of paper and a pencil and just draw.
Yep. A lot of
Right.
times I forget about that because I will get stuck, even though I know, man, I could probably draw this quickly. Like, when you're problem solving and you're in it,
Yeah.
I'm sitting there trying to make the rig do something or come up with something. And then I sometimes forget, like, hey, if I
do
just
too,
turn
yeah.
this off, I can draw it. And then,
That's
you
it.
know, so yeah, I'm still trying to remember to do that more often.
Nice. And do you take video reference of yourself doing moves as well?
Yes. Oh
You
yeah.
do?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I've learned the hard way, like, well, especially like when I was first starting out, I'd be like, you know, when I use reference, this looks so much better than when I don't, you know, and why is that, you know, and for me, it's, you're learning how to see. And so like learning and studying the reference, you're not necessarily taking it one-to-one, like trying to copy it exactly, but learning what's happening with the body and all that kind of stuff. I think helps so much more. And it's more, what you're going for is believability. Right. And so,
Exactly.
If you don't know these things yet, I think maybe the further along you get, like there's been some shots where I didn't need reference, because of quick turnaround or whatever it was, you know. I think there were at least 2 shots on Crash where I didn't use reference, but there was some sort of drawing reference.
Okay.
So at least there's some sort of reference that you use to test it out before you're actually doing it in Maya.
Yeah. It's funny because like animation, like especially in the beginning, they keep telling you all the time to push your poses to make sure that you actually kind of like push the body and make sure that you kind of like don't just copy reference and you just have to push everything. But in reality, unless you know like the rules of gravity, well, like where the body distribution, the ratio distribution on the body is in terms of weight and balance. Right. Unless you know those things, looking at reference and looking at that stuff and putting in your animation, you cannot push things until you actually get that unlocked, right? Exactly. So it's almost like reference gives you that like staple of like, this is how it looks in reality. Now I can actually push my stuff further if I need to.
Yep.
So that's kind of how I see reference as well. And it takes years for you to kind of get that eye that you get to the point, like you said, that you don't even need to reference because you know more or less where the wave shift happens, right, or where the gravity will actually kind of act harder, or when you can push things further or not.
It's amazing. Like someone like Eric Goldberg is an anomaly that he can just think something and draw it, you know, and he's like, oh, I don't use thumbnails or
I just know it. Yeah, it's incredible. Like, it's incredible. Like,
how do you do that?
Yeah,
but that's an anomaly. That's not the rule, you know.
Yeah, like, him, Glenn Keane, the Nine Old Men, they're all like, it's just like, oh, just think about it and it happens. It's amazing.
Yeah, right.
It's amazing.
No.
To be like, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but Richard Williams, rest in peace. He actually had these videos that he would look at somebody walking, and then he would tell you. The person was walking on 2s or on 4s or on 5s, or the best one was this. Like he could look like behind the wall, he could look at just that person's head and he'll be able to tell if the person was male, female, overweight, skin, whatever, just because the bob of the head. Right. He'll be able to actually decipher that. And then they would actually go behind the wall and be like, yep, that's exactly right.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's just from observing over all the years,
things.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. You just, I don't know, you just develop a second nature. But I think we'll be there by the time we actually like very old men.
Right.
Maybe it'll never happen. Who knows?
Probably not. Yeah.
Probably not.
But that's okay. I think, reference isn't cheating. I think that's the biggest thing that students need to know is like using video reference. Like, for some reason, you think right away at the beginning, oh, that's cheating. I'm just going to copy what that's doing or whatever. And then, but once you start to realize you're not copying it, you're studying it.
Yeah.
And you're seeing what is moving, what's leading what sort of arcs are happening here, and what the balance of the character, and what are the hips doing, and learning. Like I watched, there's that website Endless Reference. I remember when I was at Animation Mentor, I would go there a lot just to look at how people walk. There's lots of good references, videos on there of different size people and how they walk from different angles, and just trying to figure out, okay, when the weight goes on that leg, the hip goes up. Okay, well, why does it do that? And trying to figure out why too. Yeah. I just think it helps a lot.
Those websites are super useful for that kind of stuff as well. Yeah. YouTube has a few, but there's a few websites dedicated, like you mentioned, that are super helpful. like I used to do that a lot as well back in the day. And the thing that struck me the most is like how unbalanced people are,
Mhm.
and also how that is what gives texture to animations,
Right.
right? When people say like whenever you do a walk cycle, just copy this one, this part and that part, and then you actually all of that stuff. Well, that works well, but you also need to actually add this element of like randomness and just like
Yeah.
having make sure that you favor one side more than the others ever so slightly in order to make sure that it's slightly more realistic and it doesn't feel so mechanical, right?
Exactly.
That stuff
In
is great.
music, like when you're using music recording programs, it's called humanizing it. So you
Humanizing
use,
it.
yeah. And so it's like, because
You
there's
have a Maya plugin that they call that.
there's something called quantizing that puts all of the notes that you play, like in MIDI, right
Yeah.
on certain beats.
Yeah.
But then it sounds mechanical, like a robot played
Exactly.
that. And
Yeah.
so then there's another plugin thing called Humanize, which
Yeah.
then kind of randomly throws it just slightly off a little bit in different places.
Animators need to learn a thing or two of this plugin. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
right. We need that plugin. Humanize it.
Humanizer. I love that. Do you have to go, or are we still okay
No,
to
I'm
go?
good. I'm good.
You good?
Yeah.
There's a really good question here that I think we should take care of. We should try to answer at least. How do you guys get into the animator's mentality, creating high-level animations? Most of the time, I have ups and downs in animation. How do I balance them out? You gonna go first?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, like as far as coming up with creative ideas for shots and stuff, the advice that I've gotten was, especially if you're taking audio, you're trying to take audio from some movie or something or some TV show, and then trying to make it into your own shot, but you don't want to do the same situation.
Yeah.
That did. So you find some audio that interests you. It's like, oh, this is kind of a cool, maybe change of emotion or whatever. But then don't just jump in and start animating something. Really think through what are some ideas, what are some locations that these people can be in. How can I take them not using that exact same situation that the audio is from, but put that in a different situation? Like the audio I used from Ferris Bueller's Day Off with my dog. There's a talking dog, and it's it's Cameron from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He's in his car and he's like, he's gonna call me. He won't stop. He's not gonna stop. I can't remember the exact words right now, but he won't stop until I come over. And then he just gets angry. Well, this isn't fair or whatever. And so I'm like, well, what could that be? And Nick Kondo helped me through this too. And he was like, we'll come up with a bunch of different situations. Don't go with your first one.
Yeah.
And I think that's great advice, because I've done that before, where you just go with your first idea, and it was okay. But if you take the time to really try to one up yourself, it's like, all right, well, what's a better idea than that? And then ask your friends also. Like, that's helpful, is asking around, hey, what do you think of this idea? Is there a better idea? It's okay. Friends are going to want to help you out. It's not like you're stealing someone's idea. It's just asking for help, right?
Sure.
And then, and then I finally decided, okay, I want this dog to be wearing, it was Christmas time, I'm going to put him in a Christmas sweater that his owner always puts him in. And so there's pictures in the back of him from previous years wearing different ugly Christmas sweaters. And the owner's with a camera, phone, trying to get a picture for this year. And he's just like, the dog's looking the other way, and he's all just upset. Like, he'll keep calling till I come over. He'll make me feel guilty. And then he looks back and he sees the owner holding some bacon. And then he's like, this is ridiculous, and he's like, okay, I'll go, and it totally worked for that situation, which was totally different than the Ferris Bueller's Day Off situation.
Yeah, exactly. No, completely. I couldn't agree more. I think the source of, at least for me, and the source of most animators in the beginning of like having those ups and downs and having shots that are good and then some that are not so good is normally lack of planning, like Tom was mentioning. It's lack of like making sure that you think about the shot and you do some thumbnailing and you actually know exactly how you're going to go from the beginning and end, and making sure that the shot always has a story. Like, even if you do like a 2-second shot, it has to have a beginning, middle, and end. You cannot just end abruptly or start abruptly as well. And also, something that I would say about this is that in the beginning, as you are an animator and you start to learn your craft, you're not going to be all the time awesome. You're going to have certain moments of brilliance that you're going to be like, man, I really think I can do this. I feel it in my bones that I can do this. And as soon as you feel that way, you're going to do your next shot and it's going to be rubbish. It's going to be horrible and you're going to hate it. And it's going to be incredible. Like, you're just not going to like it. So that is part of the path to actually get to be an animator. Eventually, even evens out and you realize where your holes are, and what the things that you are doing right now that are actually making you not really animate to a certain quality. But in the beginning, is part of the journey. You just have to kind of take it easy and, take the good days and the bad days, put them together and get to a more or less day. I think that's the best advice that I can give you there.
I think it's don't be afraid to suck. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay. Like, we all have terrible shots. I remember, I think it was Zach Parrish. I shared it on Instagram a while back. He had a quote. I don't remember it exactly, but it was, as soon as he started to realize, it's okay to have some bad animation. You're just going to have it, like, even as a professional. And hearing a Disney animator say that was very reassuring. Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh, you mean they don't just magically make amazing animation all the time?
Yeah.
Like, that's an unrealistic goal to try to achieve. Really?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, even professionally, you will suck still,
right?
At some points.
And that's why we help each other out. It's
exactly.
Like, we've got a team. It's not just you.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We always have bad days. You have people that maybe sit next to you. Maybe, like, I had people sitting next to me, both people being much better than I am, and then me looking at their screens and thinking, why do I suck so much? And what am I doing here? But, like, you can ask them for help because they are more experienced, or they actually have a better eye for animation, or whatever it is. You can ask them for help and be like, what am I going wrong here? What are you doing that is making your animations better? I think humility definitely takes you. It's like the best shortcut for animation.
Yes.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I can feel a lot of that from you, Tom.
Oh, thanks, man.
Like, learning all the time and like actually kind of like asking advice of all these people. Like, I think it's pretty cool. Like, when I saw once again, going back to the very beginning of the conversation, when I saw your feed and how you're sharing the knowledge and the path to get here and how long you've been doing this, which hasn't been very long, and how well you're doing it, given the fact that you've been doing it for 5 years. I think it takes somebody that is very strong in spirit to be able to kind of be like, I'm going to learn from everybody, and just stick it all in as fast as I can.
I think animators, you have to be lifelong students, and that's what it is. You have to be hungry to learn all the time.
Yeah, completely.
And at the same time, what I'm learning right now is you have to know when to take a break from taking too many classes. It's like, or your wife tells you no more classes for
a while. Even though you want to have another one.
Right. Oh, but I saw this class, I really want to take it,
Yeah.
No
more classes.
Now. That's right, at least for a little bit.
That's cool. Well, Tom, like, I can see lots of people like commenting, like doing great stuff, talking about great stuff. But Tyler, by the way, shout out to Tyler. He's like one of my latest students. Nice. But yeah, like, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Tom. I don't want to like take too much of your time.
Same here, man. No, this has been fun.
Yeah,
this
has been fun for me for sure, man.
I love it.
Fun. Yeah. Thanks a lot for sharing your experience, and keep on like doing amazing videos online. Do you want to plug anything in?
No, it's just I'm what I know right now that I'm just doing PlayStation, I really want to start maybe getting a little bit more into just doing some tutorials or even more analysis videos, what I've done before is like just doing some master studies and trying to share those with people. And I just want to tell people, if you want to send me a direct message, on Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn, go for it. If I have time, I'd love to, help you out if I can. But yeah, I love trying to teach things. That's always been a part of me. And I think that's why when I was a worship pastor, I loved that. And I forgot to mention, there was one year where I was in between worship pastor jobs and I became a guitar teacher. And I was a guitar teacher and a theater tech director. And so that whole year I was and it was for a middle school and a high school. And so I just realized, yeah, that's a part of me too. I love learning things, but then if you just keep it to yourself, that's all it is, right?
That's all it is. Yeah, exactly. and there's something to be said about do you know how much you've learned if you don't teach somebody else?
Exactly.
Right? Because if it's all in your mind, then how much do you really know? So like teaching it to somebody else is the best way for you to be like, I think I got that. Like, it's definitely deep in there.
Yep. And I would say that to everybody that's watching and listening, to do that with each other. It's like, don't think, I think there's a part of you that thinks, well, I'm not a professional, or I'm not an expert, so I can't do a tutorial or whatever. You know what I mean? And it's no, you know what you know.
For sure.
And you will start to know too, maybe there's some things that I'm getting that my friend isn't getting. So maybe I can make something to help my friend.
Yeah.
Completely. And so I think we're better together. So.
Yeah. And it serves as a reference for the future. Whenever you become a better teacher or a better animator, you look back at it and be like, how much did I really know when I did this video?
Exactly. Maybe I shouldn't have made that one.
Maybe I should.
I can just delete that. I actually have done that with a few of my older videos.
Oh, yeah?
Delete it. That never happened.
Yeah, no, but you can serve as a reference for you to be like, actually, no, it's all rubbish.
Right, exactly. Because the thing is, none of us know what we're doing.
No,
really.
Exactly. So yeah, we're just trying our best.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and it's a great thing.
Completely. Cool, Tom. I'll leave you be, Harvey. Man. No problem at all. I hope we can do this some other time.
Oh yeah, I'd love to.
That would be amazing. And thanks a lot for taking the time and accepting to do this. It's been a blast. To everybody in the comment section, thank you very much to everybody that have been commenting. Yeah. Super cool to actually see people from all over. Someone else from Canada, and there was someone from Texas actually.
Awesome.
Seems like everyone is in Texas, huh?
Really?
Maybe I need to go to Texas. It's like everything is happening in Texas.
Nice. That's where Brazen is.
That's what Brazen is? Okay.
Yeah, Brazen Animation.
That's cool. Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yep.
Cool. Well, thanks everybody. Thank you very much. And see you later, Tom.
See ya. Thanks, Harvey.
No problem. Bye-bye.
Bye.